Hello, dear friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back, everybody.
Please do subscribe and get that little bell click to both channels. And we will share with you guys that, Evolutionary had gotten a second strike, and that's happened before. Actually, during the time of Evolutionary being up, I bet you it's probably got 10 strikes. But what happens is, after 3 months, they come off. So, and they also make it so you can't publish during strikes. For the first time, after appealing, they actually reversed their decision and reinstated a video that's never ever happened before. So it does feel like, again, we need to speak up as much as possible. That's the only way things change, is when we call things out.
I know, and our energy really, really matters, because we had been doing mantras while the appeal was done, and boom, an hour later it was reinstated. So our energy really makes a difference.
Absolutely. So we've been focusing more on EEARTS since it is not demonized, so to speak, even though in a way it is demonized, because they limit the growth and the reach, which we know, because Evolutionary went to 66,000 subscribers in just under a year. And so for 5 years, it's been sitting at 66,000 subscribers. I think the peak was 66.6. Talk about giving you a message.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Life is about catching those messages. So Liz Truss resigns after 44 days. That's a double number.
Yeah,
44 days. 44 days, making her the shortest prime minister in history amid the collapse of her government due to gross economic mismanagement. But it does not matter what puppet is upon the throne. And of course, she's not on the throne. She has to go to, and she did say, I went and reported to the king. She got down on one knee, maybe two knees, and reported to His Majesty Sir King Charles. Again, in between trying to pick flies out of the air with his forked tongue, he said, okay, go thy way. You're free.
Yes, go over yonder, peasant.
Yes. Well, you're not really free. Again, once you've drank this Kool-Aid and become part of the system, there's karmic repercussions. And yes, this is why they are so careful with everything they do, because of the karmic repercussions. They have to telegraph, they have to tell us, and they have to make it our decision. So as long as we keep choosing to vote for one puppet or another, we're saying we accept the system. We have to realize we can't accept the system and expect any sort of real change. So, this is talking about the front runners. Who's going to replace? Well, let's look at our options, right? Jeremy Hunt. Wait a minute. Connections to the few. Yeah, there he is. Smiling face, part of the few. Rishi Sunak. He's rich. And he's, again, part of the few. Well, there's always Penny Mordaunt. Yes. And, she's part of the few too. So what are your choices? Well, who else do we got? We got Keir Starmer. He's part of the TLC. And some of you who have recently kind of awakened to all the things that go on behind the scenes, you might not have heard about the TLC. If you grew up and you awakened in the 80s and 90s, you would know about the TLC, because before the WEF was out there, the TLC was one of those front-running organizations that everybody knew were part of the puppet master matrix.
Indeed. It's always just coming back from the same place in the well.
So these are your leading choices, and really it's pick your poison. Literally, pick your poison. Which poison do you want to look at? Do you find Keir's face more appealing? Penny's face? Rishi's? Jeremy's? Because when it comes to policy, again, these are all nothing but puppets. And here we see Labour MP says he witnessed Tory being manhandled amid Armageddon chaos. Chris Bryant made the astonishing allegation saying he witnessed the alleged violence outside the House of Commons during a crunch vote aimed at banning fracking. You know, they are turning up the screws. The danger when they turn up the screws is that, you know, it's the same situation we've had in the past. And, you know, there's plenty of links here for you guys to go through as you look at post-war UK prime ministers with the shortest terms there. So the record has been set. As you turn up the screws on the average person, they get to a certain breaking point. This has happened in the past. And they realize that chaos is coming. And we have not really seen the chaos to come yet. We might think we have, but we haven't. We have to be ready to ride out the storm. And we need to just look at things from a historical perspective. Everything we see economically now has been repeated in the past to a degree. There's always been these periods of growth and then, you know, basically withdrawing. And it's cyclical to a degree again. And it's really more like a coiled snake. You know, I think it brings to mind like when you see a snake and its prey, it's constantly getting tighter. At first it latches on and it squeezes, it holds tight. It waits for its prey to exhale. When the prey exhales, it squeezes tighter. Then that prey can't bring in more air. And then it exhales more as it tries to gasp for air and squeeze tighter. And then everything starts getting foggy. And then the prey loses consciousness, and then it's dinner.
Mm-hmm. And then that's it. So, you know, these very morbid, natural ways that prey can take things down, they're using on us, and it's horrible. But if we have understanding, then we can do something.
You know, there was the Roaring Twenties. Before the Roaring Twenties, there was 1914 through 1918, which is the period of the First World War, which was a brutal war, which the world hadn't seen anything like that in this modern times. Again, when you go deeper past, when we go back more than, say, 3,000-4,000 years, things really get kind of blurry. You know, we could go by the official history, and you would think that, you go back 6,000 years, all you got is guys with long beards and pointy sticks. No. The farther back we go, it's more like going into the future when we start going farther and farther back, because there's been complete destruction, absolute complete destruction of very advanced civilizations upon this planet. But if we can only really look at what we've seen in quote-unquote modern times, then we should pay attention to what happened, in that period in between World War I and II. The Roaring Twenties were roaring for many reasons. And, you had the stock market booming. You had overall quality of life bouncing back after a period of horrors upon the planet, especially upon Europe's soil itself. And Germany went through losing the war and then were punished in the treaty that came about. And that led to a lot of depression within the German psyche, a psyche of a very, very proud people. And here you see the gross national income and constant prices of 1936 and GNP deflation in the German Reich, computations based on data, again given. As you see, the economy declined. Of course, the big stock market crash of 1929. And then we look at what else happened in this time period. Do you guys remember the Dust Bowl? That was coinciding, and there were actually a lot of natural disasters. As a little kid, I remember studying these periods of time, and there always seemed to be big earthquakes. There seemed to be horrible floods at the same time periods where we have these massive wars and massive social upheaval. as you see jobs for all unemployed artists, all over Europe and the United States. There was economic tension, to say the least. And this developed to the point where you had, just like today, groups leaning left, leaning right, out in the streets protesting because, hey, it was great 10 years ago, now it's horrible. And then you had, of course, the ideological divide that was growing. Join the Communist Party. Oh, really? Workers, soldiers, veterans, da-da-da. Again, you have these parties start up that are openly trying to get people to come in and join them, to utilize them to put themselves in power. And you have to look at the money behind the parties. Again, because, when we find the sources of this money, the money often will fund competing parties. And nobody competed harder and in a more deadly way, really, than in Germany with the National Socialists against the Communists. And we might think that socialism is one step towards communism, but boy, did they fight each other hard.
Mm-hmm. They did. They did a lot of that.
It's so reminiscent of what we see today. And here we have this police state going on, and I don't know, I can't see her face, but she feels very young. And this is over in Paris. And we've seen such chaos in Australia, we've seen chaos in New Zealand, we've seen a lot of chaos in Seattle and Portland and LA. And in Europe, Paris has been used to, gosh, what has it been? It's going back to 2017. We've seen all these different types of protests going on and people getting whacked with a baton. And because of this video will be demonized as well. But again, we thank you guys for your support, because we gotta point out the fact that history is repeating itself. And what year are we in? I don't know. To me, it feels like it's very much 1938, maybe 39, maybe 38, maybe 37. And again, World War II officially started in the European theater with Nazi Germany and Communist Soviet Union making an agreement to go in and split up Poland. They made an agreement to split up Poland. And they did, in like very, very short order. My mom was also an avid historian. I think that's where I get part of this. It's in the DNA. And the Polish military was not ready for what was to come, as Germany had very advanced tanks. The Panzers were much more advanced than anybody else's at that point in time. And here was the Polish army still fighting on horseback. That wasn't really too fair. It didn't last very, very long. And so Poland found itself split between the communists and the National Socialists. This is exactly how it works. This is exactly the divide and conquer that we see always going on. Propaganda all over the place. We know all about Hitler's youth. But there was also, propaganda on the other side too. And it was all about trying to, some might say, divide evenly enough so that these forces could be destructive enough when it came time to cause real havoc. As you see voting. Oh, yeah, I think a lot of people did end up voting for that guy over there, that name. Crosses topsy-turvy. That was how our buddy Nostradamus, signified it. And he called the second Antichrist Hitler. Well, no, Hister. But Hister is also a name for the Danube, which is a river right there through this whole area that we're talking about. Interesting, is it not? It's fascinating how we could get a glimpse of timelines, yet the timelines are not set in stone. They're always changeable. But then again, you have these forces that are constructing the timelines they want. So again, communism, National Socialism, you see, there's more than one of these. There's quite a few where they show people that only come to between thigh high and waist high with these ideal looking, the word that comes to mind is Aryan. And really, it reminds you again of these Nordic extraterrestrials. When we think about the Anunnaki being 10, 12 feet tall or so, I mean, this is a perfect representation here, but he's being represented as the ideal in these times of trouble. Oh, the things that go on behind the scenes. And here you can look at the elections in 1928 compared to 1932. You look at National Socialists got 2.6%. And again, even back then, so they say, in 1928, 33.1%, 4 years later, big shift in power. And of course, we understand what happened. What happened was, the birth of, purposefully, the Second World War. Because again, all these things are always cultivated. We have to look at the corporations and the families behind all this. We have to look at the bigger picture. As you see, the old giving way to the present, the past giving way to the present, which will give rise to the future, which will be a replay of the past.
Cycles around and around and around it goes. So you can see how important it is that we have some understanding.
And this is just basically saying, is it happening again? Are these same patterns happening again? Why would they happen again? Well, they would happen again because the same real forces are in power and in play. Nothing has really changed. Again, these countries are always changing borders and boundaries. Did you know that this was Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1938? Moral of the story, mainstream media is not always reliable. No, Man of the Year to Demon of the Century.
Mm-hmm. And I know a few other beings who have made, Person of the Year too in mainstream.
You can't trust the mainstream media, and if you trust anything in the mainstream, we have to question one's sanity.
A lot.
So here we go, and we're looking at an atlas. And so this is 1950. This is after World War II. And the point we want to make is that borders are always changing. Okay, do you know this little spot over here? Well, this is where all the fighting is. There's Odessa, there's Kiev. It's all part of the Soviet Union. There is no Ukraine in 1950s. And yet the way things are given to us is it's as if the Ukraine was always independent. And again, there was no Russia either. There was not a separate Russia. It was the Soviet Union. Turkey over here, Bulgaria, Romania. So this is what I grew up with. Austria, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and you had Germany split. The Federal Republic of Germany and the German Democratic Republic. The GDR, as it were. Now, the GD and Berlin itself was split, by the way. The GDR, East Germany was under the control of the Soviet Union, as was Poland, Czechoslovakia. There was a horrible thing, that occurred in Hungary. It was very bloody. So you could see this map in 1950. Yet if we look back to 1913, pre-World War I, we see it's totally different. Now we do see the Russian Empire there, pre-World War I. Now this is when the Tsars were still in power, before the Tsars were overthrown. And the Tsars were basically, you could take Tsar and you could actually say it's a way of saying Caesar. It's a kingship, emperor, so to speak, through bloodlines, again, families. And again, this is that same island. Here we're looking at Crimea. We're looking at, again, what was the Ukraine, but it's not the Ukraine. And the Austria-Hungary Empire, when I asked my aunt, who was born in 1894 or so, something like that, she lived to be almost 100, and say, well, where did your side of the family come from, Auntie? She said, we come from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. And again, you could see everything is always changing. Serbia, very big, very large. Again, there is the German Empire, which goes all the way up into the Baltic nations now. So you can see the map is constantly changing. That's 1913. And this right here is right before World War II. And you see it's changed again. There you have the German Reich, right? We just looked at the last one. You see pre-World War I, the German Empire was very, very large. And then just before World War II, the German Reich is much smaller. And actually this little enclave here is right now under control, not exactly, but it's under control of Russia, as you have Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia over there. Commonwealth of Poland, Kingdom of Romania, Republic of Turkey. We go back far enough, we had the Ottoman Empire. Where was Turkey? Well, it was the Ottoman Empire at that point in time. So again, the maps are always changing. Go back to 1000 AD, as somebody's making note of what we're saying, yes. And we see Kiev and Rus. Kiev and Rus. Kiev is the capital of Ukraine now, right? Kiev. Rus. That's where Russia comes from. They were one people in 1000 AD. And they weren't in control of this area. They weren't even in control of this southern portion of Ukraine. You can see Kiev was under control. And up here we have Rostov. So, again, it's always changing. It's all about division. We see Germany was there. In Germany, actually, you could see the control of the Germans was down into Italy. Everything is always changing. And this is talking about the Balfour Declaration, November 2nd, 1917. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you on behalf of His Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with the Jewish Zionist aspirations which have been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Again, 70 AD, the Romans came in, destroyed pretty much everything, and you had the diaspora, where many people were carried off into other parts of the world, or they just got the heck out of town. Got the heck out of Dodge, yes. As we would say when I was growing up.
Me too.
And so this is where you had the quote-unquote Jewish people basically dispersed all over. 70 AD. From 70 AD to this time period, you're talking about no homeland truly for the Jewish people. Now again, when did the Jewish people get there? Well, that's the subject for another video. But basically, we could say maybe about 800 years prior to 70 AD, something like that. And for the thousands of years before that, you'll find the DNA of what they call the Palestinian people always in this area. And again, it's these labels always change. The thing is, humanity's always divided. That's the biggest part. That is the biggest part of it. And recognizing the families. Rothschild, Lord Rothschild. Yeah. The government, His Majesty. Hey, you know what? We're going to give them a homeland again. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to boot out everybody that doesn't agree. At first, coexistence. Come on, everybody's going to get along. But then, of course, you arm one side much more than you arm the other side. You know what's going to happen. And it's all about creating the conditions to give you another war. And this is exactly what Albert Pike said back in 1871. 1871, again. So was it God that recreated Israel? I will bring back my people from all over. No, it wasn't. It was a Rothschild. It was the secret societies. It wasn't God. Oh, it was God acting through the secret. No, it wasn't. Again, the true creator of this universe has allowed free will. So it's whatever we can achieve. And that's positive or negative. And of course, there are the negative forces that manipulate the naive.
Mm-hmm. And boy, are those bloodlines so critical for them to be able to be puppeted.
Now, whether you think this is a forgery or not, and we're gonna check with Albert Pike himself, because we have been able to connect to him, and Cindy feels she'll be able to connect to him even more. And this is why they don't want you communicating with the dead. This is why they don't want you communicating with spirits. They don't even want you looking at cards, like tarot cards, that might actually awaken your consciousness so that you are open to the idea and concept of archetypes and timelines. And they don't want you developing any sort of psychic abilities. No. The CIA, the FBI, the KGB, the SS, no, they want to control that side of it so they could have absolute control and absolute power. They can't have the masses seeing through their lies and illusions.
And they want to control the people that have these abilities too.
And they do. MK Ultra, very real. So many other programs, very, very real. And so the Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the difference between the fascist and political Zionists. This war must be brought about so Nazism is ultimately destroyed. And of course, some will say, well, how is he saying this in 1871? There was no National Socialism. Well, again, because it's all part of the script. It's just all about basically bringing about these cyclic periods of devastation, destruction, and redoing things economically in the manner of a python, a slow but steady crushing down of humanity, slow but steady choking off of humanity from the very air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink.
And, it doesn't bother them one bit. I think people make the mistake of thinking that these entities have feelings and maybe they might feel bad or something of that nature. But no, they're created. It's very natural for them to have a goal and make that goal regardless of how they make that goal. That's what's important to them. It's just in their nature.
And, World War III is in some ways going to showcase Christianity against Islam. So all this is just part of it. Now, is there one true dogma? No. All of it is their creation. They've created all these dogmas. They've created these political systems. They've created the Nazism. They've created the communism. They've created everything we see, basically. So obviously, any choices they give us, we could refer back to these characters. Not a good choice. Not a good choice. Not a good choice. Not a good choice. What's the choice then? Something outside of the system. The food crisis of 2023 is going to be far worse than most people would dare to imagine. Yeah, again, this is the perfect storm for global food production. Completely telegraphed. We understand this. And if we can't understand what's going on with the setting up of the U.S. and NATO to be Babylon the Great, that's going to burn at a distance and people are going to be afraid to come even close. It's all right there. They've given us the script. Why are we amazed when we see the outcomes?
It's just we have to find ourselves in a place of understanding so we're not in shock when we see what they're going to do, because all of this is some weird distraction for something else.
China calls top chip executives for emergency talks after Biden unleashes economic war. Oh, yes. Biden the tiger. Yes. Oh, Tony the tiger. Let me at him.
Biden the paper tiger.
He reminds me of the tiger from The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that one too.
He doesn't have a heart, right? No heart. Well, he also doesn't have a brain either. No. So in that sense, he's a little bit like the Tin Man. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is, it's all part of the script, guys. All part of the script. Hey, chips. China chips. What else am I thinking about? Oh, yes. Yeah, how there's key parts in the F-35s that are made in China. So it shouldn't be a surprise when we see F-35 stealth fighter crashing in Utah by the Great Salt Lake there. There's numerous videos you can see. The F-35s They've been plagued with all sorts of problems, and that's America's top fighter. Made in China, guys. It's going to have a very, very obvious outcome, is it not?
Yes, indeed.
Norway on edge over drone sightings. The rest of son of Putin confidant. Yeah, amazing. Here we have drones again. They don't know where they're from. We had that same situation happen in the heartland of the U.S. We've had drones over the only, that to my knowledge, the only nuclear power plant in Arizona, which happens to lie due west of Phoenix, the largest city in Arizona. If that power plant had an issue, you would have mass evacuations of Phoenix ordered. And we don't know who the drones were that were over that power plant. Again, this is stuff that's been planned for a very long time. Australia signs defense deal with Fiji as U.S. ally rushes to counter China. It's all too little too late, and it's all too much on purpose. And meanwhile, let's listen to BG. Well, where would a video be without a little wisdom from BG, or should we say BGR? If you guys know what I mean, at that other family that initial starts with an R, and it's not the Red Shields.
Well, BlackRock and Larry in particular are a great example of private sector leadership. Anyone who says that climate shouldn't be a factor in how you evaluate the future of a company, isn't, that's not capitalism, because companies that have emissions, they are going to be subject to border adjustment tariffs or taxes. You also have to think about companies, if you're dealing with severe weather events, that's got to be factored in. Is the company ensuring that? Are they becoming more resilient? So the attacks are kind of illogical, because climate does affect the economy, which does affect investments.
So he says we're being illogical if we don't agree that there needs to be climate taxes, carbon, a carbon component to the monetary system. And he loves BlackRock, who is ready to gobble up everybody's homes as soon as they are about to be evicted.
Oh, they're high school sweethearts.
Meanwhile, he's buying up all the farmland. How do some of these people how are they out in public?
And they say these things and do these things with a straight face. That, it's like, gosh, what's inside that meat suit?
And yet they tell you to do things that they don't do themselves and their families don't do. But they tell you should do this. And then they do things that we can't do. How are they still in control of so much energy? Because again, when we look at a monetary system, it's controlling energy. It's controlling resources. How does humanity allow that control to go on? It's just mind-boggling. But again, so many have drank the Kool-Aid. And this guy is gone missing. James Gordon Meek has gone missing. A report on an FBI search last spring at the home of then ABC News reporter James Gordon Meek generated a response from his attorney, lingering questions over the nature of the investigation. So there was an April 27 raid on his apartment in Arlington, Virginia. He has not been charged, but he's missing. Nobody knows where he went, where he is. Nobody knows if he's, on earth or in heaven or hell, so to speak. Again, hell exists in the minds of those that believe in it, and also the minds of those that are so conflicted with guilt and that karmic repercussion from atrocious acts that they have committed. Best always to take the high road and be as guilt-free as possible.
And some of them do. Sometimes you get someone in the mix that might actually have a consciousness, and sometimes that's what gets them in trouble.
Yeah, and when scanning him, he doesn't feel to be in a good place, and we will leave it at that. And so this is from Reuters, talking about, again, bullying and people that perhaps believe in CONS piracy theories. And again, we could get into all that, but all we got to do is look to the history. because what's coming is going to be very, very reminiscent of, again, what we saw playing out in 1930s Germany right before the outbreak of the second WW. And we are obviously right before the outbreak, some will say it's already underway, of the third WW. And somebody had made a comment about gold and silver. And we're not against gold and silver, and we're not against, there needs to be a form of energy exchange. When you have the monetary system that we do, that allows the few that are completely greedy, self-serving, and just, they're not the type of people you want in charge of something where you want to create a balanced society, an equitable society. No, we can't have that type of system, yet there should be an energy exchange. If you're putting out energy, whatever that is, if you create a work of art, you're putting energy into the art. Somebody wants that work of art, they should do something that there's an equal energy exchange for equal, where both parties feel that they're getting a fair deal. Now, it could be so simple as a dozen eggs for a dozen apples. It could be that type of thing. It's things where we have to come to agreements and we feel good about it. When you have this system's all about supporting the ticks and the leeches, the parasites, which we might call in today's systems, bankers and things like that, or politicians. Mm-hmm. They just feed off of the work of the masses without really contributing anything themselves. All they contribute is to their own and their masters' well-being and ability to control energy. Gold has a lot of intrinsic value. And really, when we scan and see, well, what's the greatest value of gold? It's in life extension.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's something that both gold, silver, and some very valuable gemstones, they all have that ability to do things for the human body that could bring life extension. And if you were an entity and you did use gold in a form that kept you alive and young, wouldn't you then guard that with everything you had?
Zechariah Sitchin and others have given us the story that the Anunnaki came here to mine for gold. And, some have come up with the thought that it's their atmosphere that needs to be fixed. But, the reality is they use gold as a life extension item, per se. It's a form of medicine. It also does help cognitive facilities as well. But the life extension properties of gold is what makes it so valuable. And this is why you'll see gold now it's all heading over towards China, and so much of it does truly go off planet.
And if you look at gold and you look how it can be down in the ocean for so long in these shipwrecks, and it's not tainted. There's nothing wrong with it. It is such a pure entity, and they use that to keep themselves young. It's very, very important to them. But they give us another story. They just basically say, oh, it's just a precious metal. No. It's far more than a precious metal.
Well, you got to say, why is it precious? Well, everybody agrees. But why does everybody agree? Well, we don't know, but there's some beings that are very powerful that really value it highly, so I guess we should value it highly. Mm-hmm. And again, what they won't tell you is that it could really extend the lifespan. It could also help with thinking clearly. And silver has many antiviral, antibacterial properties as well, and that's why, part of why silver is so valuable. So, for these times as a hedge, it would not be a bad thing. We do not deal with anybody. We don't promote anybody as far as gold and silver. We don't, make any money off it saying, hey, go buy from this guy or that guy, because we ourselves don't buy from anybody. So, but we do know it does have inherent value, and that's why it's so dang expensive. When you think about how expensive gold is, it should tell you that there's some serious worth there. And this article is talking about the asteroid that wiped out the dinos, as at least as how they show it, the one that hit there and created mile-high waves. There will be, the guides have shared that there are going to be some impacts that will be impactful to society. And so, the guides have let us know to not live on direct coastline. And we just share that with you. Each person has to just listen to, their mind and heart. Is every single coastline in danger? No. And again, I do think that the artificial component is more dangerous than the asteroids that at some point in time will be making their way through and probably, impact the world. Again, I think there are powers that be, and actually I know that there are powers that be that will take care of anything that would be something that would destroy civilization entirely. They won't allow it, as life is too precious. But again, they don't want to interfere with free will. It's a delicate balance.
It is, and understanding how important our consciousness is and how we can really wield energy. I mean, once we learn that, then we can really start creating.
Absolutely. If Cindy didn't feel the way she does, and if I left Florida before Cindy and I, really interacted, and I left Florida really listening to the guides without understanding why. I really didn't understand why, totally. I could see floods. I could understand, hey, where I'm living, it's 8 feet above sea level. At the same time, the Sarasota area, Nokomis, Venice, I loved it and felt very, very comfortable in some ways there. Although the energy there from all those little towers and stuff was very intense, and it was hard to deal with as time went on. And now Cindy and I are to the point where, it's very hard to find any place east of the Mississippi without a lot of those towers. So it gets tougher and tougher to handle the energies. And that's something, I don't want to go too long on this video, but so many people, I want you to understand that many people are having all sorts of symptoms that are directly related to all the frequencies around us that we can no longer tolerate. And that might be the frequencies that are given off by family members, even spouses in some cases, as well as the non-natural frequencies that are penetrating us constantly all day long, every day.
I know you have to really look at your energy body and know that frequency, it needs to have some type of peace for it to do what it needs to do to reach your 3D body and create certain cycles for things that need to naturally happen. And if that energy body is constantly being interrupted and zapped, you're not going to be feeling well. You are going to be exhausted. One thing that I learned when I first started doing sound healing is that you get really tired. I would work on 2 people and go sleep for 4 hours because that energy body is doing work, not just on you, but on the person that you're working on. It takes effort. It takes a lot of drag for that energy body to move back into from a chaotic point to a place where it's in a good pattern where it can be most efficient. So when we're around all these zapping things, boy, of course you're going to be exhausted. Give yourself that rest and get out to nature as much as possible.
It reminds me of one little excerpt from the Bible where there was a crowd around Yeshua, and Yeshua felt somebody touch him. And he knew somebody touched them because they believed that they would be healed if they just touched him. And he felt the energy go out at him. It was always written so it would always put a little bit of a smile on my face. Because again, when we do energy work, you want to be rooted and grounded. And I root and ground to the earth as well as out into the heavens. So you're constantly drawing in the cosmic energy through the crown chakra. You're drawing in the earth energy through the feet. And then you're allowing yourself to be a conduit for this energy for people. Yet you can feel the energy flow clear as day. I mean, the sensations that Cindy and I experience because of how much energy work we've done, how much mantras and meditation and Qigong we've done over many years and decades, it's more real, and sometimes it feels stronger than anything you feel on a physical level. But it's real common for people to first feel this energy as a little bit of tingling, a little vibration. You might notice a cool spot, a warm spot. You might feel something going on with your spine, tingling at the top of the crown, tingling on your feet, tingling in your palms. But as you get more advanced and you're able to channel more and more of this energy, you'll feel it very specifically, and also often you'll feel it in different chakras. And I'll know when somebody's been cut off from their guides because the energy that comes through my crown chakra all of a sudden will be like intense. So I know, their guides have been wanting to talk to them and they haven't been able to communicate.
Right. And so many times that's why people contact us, but they'll say, well, I don't know why, I just feel this need. And it's because there's blocks in their energy field that is keeping that communication from happening. And that communication is most important during these times. So, real important to keep the energy body clean. The food that you eat can have a big impact on whether you have these blocks or not. So changing all of those 3D needs is really important right now. I mean, we're in a chaotic place, and they just want to throw on more chaos to make it so that you can't think straight, so that you can't think properly, so that you don't, you're not sure which move to make, but you just need to make a move. So, very important to get into alignment.
And this article is talking about how DNA can be used to store digital data. Again, the merger of humanity with AI, that's number one. That's at the highest echelon of their list. And again, DNA itself is not just in your physical body. So when your body, it goes back to the earth, it doesn't mean your DNA doesn't still exist. It does in your energy body. So this is part of what's misunderstood. And even the most advanced computers that they let us know about can't touch our DNA. It really can't. Because again, this is all about the artificial trying to overcome the natural order of things. That is what this whole battle is about. Whether we are calling it God and Satan, angels against demons, whether we're calling it Ahura Mazda against Ahriman, we could go into all these different cultures and give you Asuras versus Devas. There's all these Titans versus, the Olympian gods, etc., etc. It just goes on. And really, really, it boils down to the natural against the unnatural. And again, the original source of all, the creator of this particular universe and that creator's original intention, and then the hijacking that has been done by these dark agencies of that original intention. So again, reconnect with nature. We could learn a lot about nature. We could discover a lot of sorcery that's right in front of us, and we could act in amazement to the natural sorceries that are out there, as well as, the unnatural.
Indeed. And how does this happen? This is fantastic.
Absolutely. Truly, we must be born again and see through new eyes to the magic and the wonder that's all around us on this globe, because it is a magical place.
Indeed.
Much love. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.